our next speaker, or our first speaker, Daniel, actually shares the same beliefs as I do. He believes that it's time for Romania to unite, stand up, and create a global brand of excellence around a technology which is emerging and has tremendous opportunities for growth around VR and AR. So I'd like to welcome Dan to the stage. Let's give him a round of applause. Daniel, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Colin. Great intro, great advice. Bună dimineața. Good morning. First, I'd like to thank you for coming so early. It's not always easy. And, of course, thank Dev Talks for extending this invitation to come and speak here. Just before we start, I wanted maybe just to get a sense of what you're doing. How many of you are developers? Okay. Entrepreneurs? Yeah, that's a bit less. How many of you work in technology? Okay, and how many of you have used AR or VR so far? Okay, that's quite a lot. So I think this is going to be easy, and you probably know already a lot, maybe even more than me. Just a few words about me. Yeah, that's my life. Pretty hard to breathe if you stay under masks for your whole life. So I'm not a developer. Nobody's perfect. I basically have been working around content in the film industry, the music industry, digital media. And I'm the founder of a professional community. I came to Romania 3 years ago. And the first thing I really sensed could be of help and assistance to all the people having projects in this space was to actually federate them. So I kind of came up with the idea of building a professional community centered around these emerging technologies. We'll get back to this a bit later. So today it's really about opportunities, as Colin said. We'll have time to network during the whole day, of course. If you're interested in finding out solutions, maybe connect with other people doing the same thing in the whole country, we can be a starting point. So, first thing seems obvious. Do you mind if we dim a little bit the surrounding lights? Can we take down the lights just a little bit? Off or on. Okay, let's leave it like this, it's okay. So we live in a 3D world. This seems obvious to everyone. We breathe, we work, we play, we touch in a 3D, and we experience 3D. This is the natural way of interacting with our world. But for decades, human-computer interaction has been extremely limited, although it's kind of catching up now. So the natural ways of interacting, look where we come from. Punch cards to this, which is a big, big leap, yeah. Always include a cat or a dog in your presentations. It kind of makes things a lot more interesting. So we've made progress in usability and interaction, but there's still a lot of work to be done. This is how we interact with information still today. It's flat, it's linear, it's narrow, and it's kind of confusing. In the future, we'll probably be much more interacting with what we need, where we need, when we need, something that's built around our context and who we are. So, in a sense, information will really adapt to us and be, well, achieving what we call 6 degrees of freedom in the space we live in, just like exactly the rest of what we're doing. So it could look a little bit like this, which can be scary. But one thing's for sure, immersive computing, because this is really a computing shift, will definitely change our lives. We'll talk about VR. We'll talk also a little bit, about AR. I don't know if you've seen this short film. If we have time, at the end, it's a 6-minute projection on what navigating this overlaid world could become. Could be strange too. So the real world and the web are coming together. This is something I've been in, not really technology, but in usability. I'm a user. I'm, let's say, a professional user, and been doing this for over, well, many years. I won't tell my age. But the fact that the real world and the information we need to access are getting together, it's going to make everything more accessible, more usable, more intuitive. You'll tell me that 3D computing, because this is really what's happening now, is nothing new. And you'll be right, because it's been used since the end of the 60s in simulation, training, games, entertainment, and actually probably the only industry that's really managed to make money out of it is the gaming industry. But it's a niche. Now look who's knocking at the door of these technologies. These are just the key players. They're building trust in this upcoming wave of immersive technologies. And there are many, many, many medium-sized, small-sized companies and independents that are working to make even open-sourced platforms and content around this. So it's exciting. We're getting into a really interesting time for those immersive technologies. But it's happening now for several reasons, because we have cheaper hardware, more powerful, also cheaper displays, because it's also a lot about usability and consuming that type of content. But the most important thing is that we have millions of content creators. Content meaning also software, apps, building services and content for the people. So I kind of believe that immersive technology is really a game changer, because it can render 3D beyond our flat screens. We've gone from television to computer to smartphones. It's coming closer and closer, and we'll probably have implants in a few decades. So it will be like interacting naturally with things that today still seem kind of detached from us. And in a way, it's kind of magic. So in 2017 or 18 now, the devices are clunky, heavy, tethered, mostly talking about VR here, but AR is also still a bit complex. We do have phones, they're getting really powerful, but all of this scene is really not ready for mainstream adoption. And, well, we're early on in this whole revolution, and if you look at what's happening in these markets, it's a good time to start. Really now is just a matter of years before wearable computing becomes wearable, which it isn't really now. Something like this, maybe. So, you probably know this dreadful, dreaded curve. This one's from July 2017. Actually showing AR and VR getting out of the disillusion period. I wouldn't really trust this, as it keeps adjusting all the time, and this is just one way to look at it. There are many others. This one is about just AR and VR compared to other user-centric technologies. But honestly, I hate those slides. They just give you a sense of the path we're on. But sometimes you need to put something that feels better. I kind of prefer those slides, if you ask me. So there's been a lot of research done, forecasts, they're continually adjusting. This one is from 2017, and if you look at the numbers, they were saying $11 billion market for VR. Not close. Of course, it was more around 4 billion, but it should double in 2018. So take the numbers with a pinch of salt. It's not really about the American hype train. They're very good at pushing new technologies and hyping up the market, but there are a lot of opportunities in this field, and we're going to take a look at what can be done in 2018. We need to start somewhere. As Colin said, this is a great time to learn, to start learning, to get started, but mostly to build something. And Colin mentioned Romania. I've been here 3 years. I'm sensing a lot of very positive signals. Of course, it's not easy. It's not Silicon Valley. But I really do trust that it's just a matter of getting the right people together and start building. Now, Romania has a history of fantastic talent in IT, developers, engineers. But most of the time they've been outsourced to international corporations, and this kind of bothers me. I'm a strong believer in retaining the value in Romania. And we started a community with some fellow guys and girls invested in those immersive technologies with the strong belief that we can start building something here that becomes a brand of excellence and that can actually radiate over parts of Europe and the rest of the world. This is not about the Romanian market, it's just about grabbing this opportunity and actually creating value. There's a lot of fantastic startups in Romania, especially in Cluj. AR and VR is early, but it's time to start thinking about how you can team up with other people who have the same vision. So, it's a computing shift, meaning that basically it's going to impact a lot of different industries. So you don't really have to be in gaming or in entertainment. Of course, this is like the driving force right now. We'll just review a couple, not a couple, but a dozen of sectors where this is happening. Of course, video games, strong industry, a long-standing experience in 3D, and also basically placing the user in the center of the action. And basically, these technologies are user-centric. Film, storytelling, advertising, that's a really exciting niche too. It's happening there. What we're looking at right now is mostly VR. We'll get to AR just after this. Television, live events, making it possible for people to be somewhere else, attend concerts, visit places. This is going to be also a game changer when the networks get powerful enough to power all of this. Still on the entertainment side, arcade centers are opening. This is mostly about gaming, but don't be fooled, you'll find a lot of this. Probably on the arts and cultural side too, museums, and probably cities trying to sometimes revive history or some part of the past. Romania has an interesting past, and some things have been destroyed. We have some friends here in the room who are also working to revive things that have been destroyed or forgotten. This is an amazing way to build experiences that keep the past and the tradition alive. Retail, AR will be very strong in this. Tourism, real estate, basically you're getting the picture. These technologies can take you somewhere. And actually, when you look at the whole thing, this is where it will really impact. Most of us are already too old for what's happening. Well, let's say the big mainstream adoption will probably come with kids who are 5 years old today and who are totally native with those technologies. Look at how they handle tablets. Look at how they handle paper magazines like tablets. It will happen very fast. And by the time they're 10, 15, those technologies will have matured and become much more mainstream. Education is a super interesting thing, but again, it's something that's already happening. Training simulation, this is nothing new. It's been used for decades. The industry applications for VR, well, maybe are a real market and have been for some years. The automobile industry, super important. You'll get to see probably talks about autonomous cars. So this changes everything again. We won't drive anymore. What will we do in the cars? Work, play, get our information, do a lot of other stuff. We don't have much time today, but there are many examples. I could show you a lot of concrete applications and examples that illustrate that most of the big players in any of these industries are already testing. Because you need to test and learn, you need to experiment, and you need a lot of user feedback. Those technologies are, since they're user-centric, pulling a lot of data from the user. This is going to help developers, engineers to craft and make products and services a lot better. Prototyping, making things easy. When those technologies also get a more collaborative, social component, this is also something we're really eager for, because it will help people collaborate in virtual spaces, cutting costs in many expensive industries. And well, in the B2B market, in the enterprise market, those things are already being used to leverage interesting, let's say, development plans, since the costs are really cut down. The military has been doing this for years. They've been using games and simulations. Nothing new. Healthcare is one of the really interesting sectors too, where a lot is happening. We used to cut up bodies all the time to train students. Thank God it's changing. And the more obvious ones, like telecommunications, which will probably blend real-time 3D presence. This is still a pretty expensive technology. The networks are not ready. But it will happen soon enough, and we might have speakers in the next few years who will be in a remote place but present with us, and hopefully we can interact with them. Last but not least, I love this tagline too. Although VR porn is really disappointing. So you've seen all of this industry need content, a lot of content. And this is an international, a global phenomenon. And we also need, well, in this global phenomenon, we need local content to address local markets. So right now, most of the VR experiences come from, you know, the roller coaster rides, stuff like this that are very, let's say, quick fixes. It's nothing pretty deep, but there's a lot of people actually working on local content. And if you think of all the industries we've just seen, content, apps, probably platforms. So these are the spaces that would be potentially interesting for any developer wishing or engineer wishing to embrace those new technologies. So what about AR? AR it's kind of different, although both technologies really are based on two pillars. They're the same, 3D content or 2D content in a 3D space, and the user, the context, adaptive to his location, to his needs. And well, augmented reality right now is more about smartphone-based apps. In the future, it will probably be another type of wearable. But if you look at this, augmented reality applies to all the same sectors. Just imagine that there's more with AR, and that's probably why the market is going to be much, much bigger. This is a real-world layer, so it will be a lot used outdoors. while VR is more an immersive, closed type of environment, which, in total honesty, will remain niche for some really dedicated sectors, and most of it will be training simulation and entertainment, but AR will be everywhere. Again, just start imagining all the services you can build that will replace apps you have on the phones. So it will be mobile first, but then we're going back to this. I think we'll have time to watch it. Have you guys seen this film called Hyper Reality? How many of you have seen it? Cool. So we'll have 6 minutes into the future at the end of the session. I'm repeating this again because it's actually a space that's moving real fast, and well, Silicon Valley is just one player and probably not the biggest. A lot is happening in Asia, a lot is happening in Europe, and if we're thinking of, we're at a developers conference, I really believe that it's a great time to start learning and building stuff. I want you to look at this slide. I don't know if you can read very well, but this was shown at GDC in March. And this is pretty interesting because okay, Unity developer being like one of the most requested talents. But if you look at the other ones that are before, and actually if you look at the top 10 emerging jobs, machine learning, data, of course sales, that's always there, but all of those specialties apply to VR and AR. So you could be a developer, but you would probably, and those technologies are still kind of complex, need to build teams. And this is interesting because it's also, again, about collaborating with other people. You will need creatives. You will need people who can run UX a lot. You will need people who can test the user experience, get feedback, analyze this, process this. You will need probably also a lot of marketing because it's getting really, really hard to get people involved in this. And right now, VR and AR, it's sectors where there's a lot of effort going on. So we're all very pumped up by the possibilities, but it's a lot of work. What does this mean for us? This means that Europe, as a whole, as a project, has a key role to play in this. We have a different culture. We're probably not as good in making hardware as the Americans or the Asians. But VR and AR in Europe will very soon represent quite a big market. And I think the most important thing, this comes from a survey that was run late in 2017, is the number of jobs that those industries will create in Europe. So low estimate, 140,000, higher estimate, 300,000. It should probably be in the higher estimate because if you take a look at this, I can share this with you later. You don't have to download it now. This is a fascinating study that says virtual reality, but is actually looking at both sectors. And it's a really big look at what can be done right now and what's being done across Europe. I'll really go very quickly on this because those are very boring slides again. So the US, software, a lot. Hardware, again, a very favorable environment for funding and risk-taking. We know this. Asia, hardware specialists, probably not that good on content, but a lot of Europeans are already working for Asian firms, and their R&D is indeed very strong. But if we look at Europe, we have a history of research. We tend to be more critical, kind of take a step back also, because we're not Silicon Valley. And right now, actually, if you look at what's happening in Europe around AR and VR, there are many countries where the industry is really shaping up quite fast. This is due to the fact that universities, small companies, startups, bigger companies are lining up, and they also get, let's say this is something that's kind of also necessary in the ecosystem, some kind of state support. But you will see that the industries can only really shape up when you have a mix of both public and private funding. So this is happening Germany, UK, France, Sweden also. Very good on research. And on the more, on the startup scene, I'm sorry, I come from Paris. Before coming to Romania, I was doing a bit the same thing in France, which was trying to get together people from various sectors to get started building stuff with these technologies. And actually France is, strangely enough, has become a key player, mostly in virtual reality. For a very simple reason, there's one city that has been doing a VR event for 20 years. 20 years. So there is something. And again, the key is probably funding, but that's only one part of the equation. It starts with people. It starts with people who basically want to build something. And this is what I'm really kind of confident about, is that this is a good time to build here in Romania something. Enough with the boring slides. Yeah. Some of you might have recognized this dude. So what does this mean for Romania? This is something we believe. Our community, we're about 120 people active right now, most of them in Bucharest, but some of them in Cluj, some of them in Iași, some of them in Constanța. It's happening everywhere, and we're trying to get all these people together. This is not a full-time job for me, but it is something that I'm doing because I'm meeting such talented, smart, hardworking people. We kind of share this vision, which is that Romania can really become a European center of excellence. VR, AR, the software, the content. And I think you should also believe that it's possible. Sometimes in Romania, things go from very small to very big, make big leaps in very short bursts. Remember how the internet became suddenly the fastest or the second fastest in Europe? It's sometimes just about making that decision, changing the way of looking at things, and then just doing. Of course, stability, political stability in Romania would help to fuel all this energy and this desire to create something, but I'm sure we'll be getting there. Again, this is not about Romania and the Romanian market. This is about stepping up and showing to the world that there can be a really strong brand in this technology, those technologies, but also other technologies, of course. So let's forget hardware, unless, who knows, someone might come up with new devices. Never underestimate the power of kids coming up with the weirdest ideas in garages. It still starts like this. So in Romania, from a recent piece of research, there are over 100,000 developers, half of which are in Bucharest, half of which are across the country, many of them in Cluj actually, and there's 32,000 engineers. If just 1% of that population starts a company, Romania can be among the top 5 countries in Europe in these markets. It seems simple, this is basic math, and this also includes failures, probably path changes because we don't even know, although I've been, and many of us in this industry have been kind of paying attention to the changes. It's going to keep changing all the time, and we have to adjust. But basically, software, content, apps, this is something you guys know how to do. And I'll just go briefly on, let's say, the two big 3D development solutions. There are many, many more, but again, you certainly know about Unity and Unreal, both originally being game engines. They've changed, especially Unity, which has become a complete solution to produce content, publish 3D content. And the pipelines that are behind this are actually so advanced right now that we lack developers. We need more 3D developers to make all that content for those platforms. Unity can be learned pretty easy. Again, many of you probably perfect their craft or get interested in stuff you can find online. There are a lot of interesting resources. But if you really want to get serious with this and start building, it might be interesting to start going to workshops. Again, this is something, it's starting to happen here in Cluj, in Bucharest, and I'm pretty confident we'll manage to come up with something more permanent in terms of teaching, training. Mostly those two 3D development platforms because they're accessible. And also you get a lot of support to publish for really different platforms. So when you work with those two platforms, you're working with a global solution. On the augmented reality side, right now is chaotic, but, well, Apple and Google have come up last year with dedicated development kits. If you just add up both user bases, this is really becoming interesting. And again, if you look at the smartphone, the history of the smartphone market, well, the smartphone apps market, it will be interesting to watch how AR apps will follow the same kind of model. There are, of course, some other solutions still very much used, like Vuforia or Wikitude, and a lot of open source development kits. You can try your hand at this. I actually have friends who never really played with these SDKs, and after a couple of weeks, they produce stuff that seems polished, usable, and I'm pretty sure this is something, if you do have time or if you still have insomnia, you could definitely try out this because, again, it's very accessible today to become a developer using those kits and the platforms behind them. So, just a quick self-promo. This is not about me. This is about us. This is about the collective effort that I did start last year, mostly on my spare time. So I'm hoping we can put in some more time in 2018 and in the coming years. The idea is that together we're much stronger. This is a usual cliche you will hear all the time, but it's so true. We've started federating small-sized companies, startups, individuals. We're getting now to hopefully include much bigger companies who are starting to get excited about the potential and mostly are also looking for talent. For us, so we've been doing bi-monthly meetups in Bucharest. We will hopefully come to Cluj in June and meet with the local VR AR scene. If you're in it, if you have friends in it, check out not our website, which is kind of more of a landing page, but our Facebook page. We'll come back soon to Cluj to actually connect with the local scene. After Cluj, there will be Iași, and this is, again, not about Bucharest only, but this is something we're just starting. Next step, map this whole ecosystem in Romania, launch a directory, launch courses, trainings, multiply events. So we need more people. And if we look a little further, one of the hopes I have is that we manage to build a dedicated space in Bucharest for this, to give access to the hardware, because this is also one problem that needs to be addressed. Hardware is expensive, keeps changing all the time, and those technologies need to be experienced, showcased. Hopefully most of the tools right now are using the same technology. So you could design stuff in VR, inside VR, making it a lot easier to prototype, test. And this is it. We're slowly, well, those technologies are about space, so we need a space. We need something that can be an accelerator, that can be a hub, where you developers, entrepreneurs can come and build some value with insights from others, but mostly the potential customers, clients could come and see what all you guys are creating. So if you want to know more, if you want to help develop the ecosystem, it's easy. Just join us, hit up us on Facebook. We also have a private group, which is kind of more on the intelligence side. We share a lot of insights, surveys, studies. If you need developers, if you have ideas, if you're looking for somebody to fund a project, this is also a community that's getting really stronger, and we want to help each other. One small last thing about what's happening around those technologies in Romania. There's a global association called the VR-AR Association that is opening a Romanian chapter. So this is, again, not about Bucharest. It's really about enabling Romanian companies, I would say mostly companies, but it's also basically individuals and startups, to access a global resource. So here you could basically, if you join this association, there's a cost, while our community is free, but this is a whole different type of service. If you're interested, just take a look at their website. Again, this is a really interesting initiative for people who are already active in that market and want to branch out to more global opportunities. So we have 6 minutes. That's kind of short. Okay, I'll ask this to you guys. If you have any questions, we could do them now, or we could do them one-to-one after this. I have all day if you want to discuss things like this, or we could watch a movie. So who wants to watch a movie? Okay, nobody wants to ask questions, so we'll watch a movie. Okay, and one last thing before I launch this. Thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure, man, time flies. And let's just take a quick glimpse into what the future could be. Fun, but not always. Thank you.
Wow, pretty cool. Did you guys get a good sense of the opportunity and potential in AR and VR? Now, I just have one question, Dan. I know you're about to get off, but what would you advise people who want to get started in the sector? Like, how could they set up a company? What kind of clients would they look out for?
Thank you. Honestly, start locally. It's more of a business piece of advice. Start with, well, basically, when you're a developer, a software engineer, or somebody wanting to provide solutions, basically, I'm sure you probably think of something you can better or make more accessible, or something you want to change. It usually starts with people who are around you. I would really say connect. Again, we're just starting this whole initiative about connecting people. You can definitely come to us. We're an open community. We're not charging anything for this. It's really about building an ecosystem of people. So that would be my first piece of advice. In terms of customers, right now, honestly, most of the content is being funded by advertising and people who use VR and AR as a tool for marketing, getting an innovative edge, doing something cool. But again, this is short-lived. Those are one-off bursts and don't necessarily build a clientele. I would kind of favor the sectors where you can actually have ongoing business. The industry definitely is looking a lot at the training and the, let's say, workforce support, because infrastructure, gas, electricity, oil, those tools can give on-site support to people working on really complex places. There's a lot happening in this. One final space I would say is a natural fit for this is architecture, or anything related to space and spatial design. Prototyping stuff in 3D has been done so many times, and this is architects know 3D software very well, but I've noticed that many of them have transitioned to VR because it's a much better sell. It's something that's really easy to show to your clients. It's more immersive. And again, the interesting part of having demos that you can actually show to people is once they experience something like this, it's nothing comparable to just watching a screen or reading a flat presentation. So I would say listen for local signs. All the industries we've listed, and there are probably more, are looking into this. It's, of course, something that sometimes requires money because you need to put up some teams. But again, you can prototype stuff, which is already a good way to actually inform potential clients of what can be done. So start with prototypes, start with demos. They can be made real fast. And then, hopefully, finding first clients will enable you to polish, do longer pieces, more marketable stuff. And then again, I don't know, you could come up with like the weirdest idea, but that could actually be a market or an answer to something that you particularly care for.
I think we got some clues to weird ideas from that video over there, didn't we? Right, Dan, thank you very much.
Thanks again.
Real pleasure. And I think the next step, obviously, you guys, is to make sure that you're always interacting with the speakers after the breaks, because one of the greatest satisfactions we get is to have audience members come up and ask us questions, because we're really here for you guys. So make sure that you connect with us and the speakers. And if you're interested in AR, VR, as you just heard that very well-rounded answer, I'm sure he's got lots of ideas for you. So thank you very much. One more round of applause, please. Thank you. Thanks, Dan.